This presentation is for a UAF class called Anthropology 242, Native Cultures of Alaska. It addresses subsistence issues for Alaska Natives. Many changes had happened in Alaska Native culture since the introduction of Western culture. This started with the discovery of Alaska with Russia and continued with the United States' current involvement. Original explorers helped set Alaska in its place today and created a dream world of what Alaska is and wanted to keep its present beauty for future generations. They described the vast landscapes and very few people who lived there, and the people who lived there were marginalized. They described the abundance of nature and resources for exploitation. Oftentimes, these explorers did not think of the people who lived on the lands since time remembers. Many people settled in Alaska for the abundance of wilderness and living off the land. The indigenous people of Alaska have been doing this for many millennia and now have many difficulties in pursuing this relationship. This presentation addresses some of these issues. Change for Alaska Natives is similar to many indigenous people around the world. Through colonization, there have been changes in subsistence, schooling, language, political forces, religion, health issues, economies, and many more subjects. Through these changes, Alaska Natives have struggled to keep their culture and ways of life alive and healthy while living in a greater society that has more power over daily decisions. State lands of Alaska are managed by Alaska Department of Fish and Game. Federal management is from an advisory board with representatives from local areas. This momentous shift in management of Alaska's subsistence resources from individuals and communities to formal governmental institutions far removed from rural Alaska is cause for frustration, anger, and resentment in Alaska Native communities. Many Alaska Natives view this as far-reaching into their lives and preventing or limiting many aspects of traditional subsistence lifestyles. The laws set in place directly affect subsistence harvests and their cultural livelihood. Through ANCSA, village and native corporations gained legal rights to some of the lands they had occupied for millennia. Native villages have gained increased access to education, modern infrastructure, and medical care. All of these gains came at tremendous cost. Alaska Natives lost control over fish and game that form the bedrock of their subsistence way of life, cultural identity, and spiritual connection to the land. This problem is not easily solved as the many different cultures and villages often have as many views that show their diversity and interests. Cultural divisions within virtually every native village in the region play a critical role in the relationship between small communities and the larger political economy that surrounds them. Subsistence and traditional diets are very important to Indigenous people, both through diet and symbolic practices. Many Indigenous people think food connects them to the land and defines who they are. Subsistence is more than an economic activity, and that it is a moral and religious activity, where the hunter purified himself, fasted, and did not say what he was going to kill, and all the things had to be treated with respect. Traditional subsistence also connected the people to the seasons and further tied people to their cultural environment. One hunter stated, "It was a connection to your seasons, to progress in your life, to continuity, to sharing in the community, to everyone coming together. That's where our heart and soul is. That's what ties us to our land. Our food comes out of there, is directly responsible for our strength, our knowledge, our inner peace, as compared to food that's outside the traditional homeland. A break in traditional subsistence further divides this feeling of belonging to the land for many people." Many Alaska Native people still choose to eat traditional foods or country foods over store-bought products. After eating store food, one is never full. Traditional foods such as salmon, berries, and moose meat are considered the most healthful and nourishing. Many people describe eating Inuit food as making the body warm, explaining how the consumption of Inuit foods leads to healthy, strong, and sturdy bodies, and how they keep the body warm. The feeling these people had from traditional foods made their bodies feel good as well as their soul and showed a deep connection to the land. Many people still choose to hunt, and this can be difficult at times as the cost of fuel and products to do these activities can be very costly. Many hunters choose to work part of the time and subsistence hunt the other part. Some people choose to only work and trade with family members for traditional foods and Western products. Further evidence that individuals simultaneously operate in the subsistence and market economies is that over 1/3 of all single adult male households in which the male works at least 6 months per year reported that over half of their household's food comes from subsistence activities. The connection to hunting as work had other benefits. It makes it so these people have social interactions, achievements, and time away from modern villages. It may be that process benefits associated with subsistence activities make them more attractive modes of production than available wage employment opportunities. This can be difficult at times as many people have to make the choice of hunting and fishing for their diets or working a job to provide the resources necessary to do subsistence activities. Many people who go hunt and fish give or trade these foods with other people in the community, keeping the sharing of resources a part of their culture as well as their mental well-being. Most hunting societies are characterized by extensive sharing of food and other resources, and their small size has made it relatively easy to trace and analyze the social relations created through and maintained by these kinds of exchange. The food does not belong to the person who buys it, but rather the whole family. In the Inuit world of goods, foods as well as other objects associated with hunting, fishing, and gathering are more or less communal property, belonging not only to the individuals but to a larger group, which can include multiple households. Those who contribute the most also have access to more goods. Many people have been moving away from villages into urban areas. They have a harder time gaining access to traditional foods. Often they travel long distances to be a part of subsistence. One woman was described as gathering products from the urban areas to bring with her to trade in her rural village. She works in an urban area doing traditional crafts. She has a network of people she constantly works with and trades with. These urban food sharing practices more or less reproduce those of the village. Not only would it do away with a person's livelihood as a native artist, which depends on having access to basket grass, seal and caribou hides, sinew, and other subsistence products, it would also jeopardize her sharing network. For the binding agents of this network are the ducks, seals, swans, blackfish, seal oil, and walrus flippers that today regularly make the trip from rural Alaska in her cooler. Many indigenous people view animals and nature as a symbiotic relationship. One elder told me a story that if you pluck one side of a spider web, the whole web collapses on itself. Western views of nature are very different. One view is of man inherently above and outside of nature, while the other is a man participating vulnerably within nature as part of the web of life with other sentient beings. All aspects of nature have a will of their own, and if treated badly and without care, they will not return or the person may have bad luck. A feeling toward an animal or even a berry needs to be addressed. If they give themselves to you, you say a prayer of thanks and accept the gift of meat you've been given. To think about the animal's suffering is to find fault with the gift, to cast doubt on whether the animal should have given itself to you in the first place. This leads to an understanding of social relationships, not only to the animal, berry, or rock, but also amongst humans as well. The changes in the environment and the impact this will have on their livelihood, as well as many non-native people living in these lands. Climate change affects the land by expanding forests, and lakes are disappearing from permafrost melting. The sea ice is melting, which changes temperatures and raises of storm surges. Salmon need specific habitats for spawning, and the rivers are increasing temperatures, as well as new species coming into northern waters. Extended social networks based on kinship seem to be buffering the impacts of these changes through widespread sharing of resources, technology, labor, cash, and information. Without the sharing aspect of these cultures, the ability to adapt would be more difficult. Modern time scientists are looking towards traditional ecological knowledge to help with ever-changing planet and global climate change. Over the past 2 decades, the concept of traditional or indigenous knowledge has become prominent in discourses of development, resource management, environmental assessment, and indigenous land rights. Scientists are seeking a deeper understanding of ecosystems as traditional people live closest to the land and see the smallest changes. It follows logically that indigenous communities are perhaps uniquely situated to assist in integrated conservation, restoration management for rare, threatened, and endangered species. There are specialists in indigenous communities that are trained and have spent many years studying the changes in their environment. Welcoming indigenous experts to collective problem-solving endeavors seems like a good step towards successful sustainability planning. It would be wise to use information from Native people as well as scientists for sustainability. With all the changes in subsistence, there are dramatic changes in health for many indigenous people from all around the world. In Alaska, there are sharp increases of diabetes, heart disease, obesity, and many other illnesses that are related to changes in diet. These problems are compounded in that many unhealthy products are very inexpensive as healthier options are more expensive. Gallons of milk can be as much as gallons of gasoline, and that can be $8 to $9 a gallon. Many Western foods are new to indigenous people, and thus their bodies do not process these foods in the same way. There are intolerances for many things. This is coupled with changes in activity levels. Subsistence lifestyles promote a healthy lifestyle in that people are getting regular exercise. They're outside and moving, which keeps the body limber and healthy. Subsistence plays a deep role in keeping indigenous people healthy. Through the changes in culture, many Alaska Natives have lost their identity and now have serious health and substance abuse problems. I believe much of this is related to substance lifestyles and a myriad of other forced changes. Subsistence activities and the knowledge is fragile. It is fragile because it is local. Knowledge common to one community is specific to its immediate environment and will not be shared widely in other communities. Thus, that particular body of knowledge lives and dies with the community that sustains it, and that it in turn sustains. When people stop participating in traditional activities, many lose their identity, and in ways that it matters immensely.